Okay, there we go. Let's go. Yes. Excuse me, everybody. Okay. We have a big guest coming up. We also have a breaking news situation, which we're going to touch on as well. Let me double check our audio. And there we go. And the audio is okay on X. And I would imagine that means it's okay on YouTube. All right, folks, we're going to start just a couple moments. There we go. Wow. Okay, that's big news. Yep. Not sure why that's doing that. Yeah, double check. There we go. There's Garney. Yep. Put that in story as well. Okay. There we go. Okay, we're going to start just a couple moments, folks. Special guests. Also, not surprising. What's this? Oh, okay. This is different with what has changed with the Department of Justice in the state of Rhode Island. And we're the only news source that's putting it out there. I know. Isn't it insanity? It is insane. So I don't, if you're asking why is that, I don't have an answer for it. All right, we're going to start. There I am. We sound good on Facebook. There it is. There's Linda. There's Colby. Yes. Hi there, Heather. Yes, I did hear about that. We're going to follow. That's still happening. It's very fluid. There's Brenda. Good afternoon, Caroline. Yes, there's Cheryl Ann. Miguel. Yes. We're going to follow that story. I'm not sure exactly. I know there was an active shooter. There is an active shooter. That's why we don't use past tense, because it's happening. It's going on right now in Georgia. So actually, while I say that, let me see what is the latest on that. 5 soldiers shot. Shooter has been apprehended. Okay. Um, 5 soldiers shot at an army base in Georgia. Suspect is in custody. Not immediately clear whether there are any fatalities. So that is the latest, but it does sound as though they have the individual in custody. So that that story will continue to develop. Fort Stewart. Let me see if I can get the latest here. Yep. None of them have lost their lives. Okay. Suspect is in custody, but the base remains on lockdown. Okay, so there's that. All right, we're going to start in just 3 minutes. 3 minutes, everybody. Yes. Now remember, we're live on X, and we're live on YouTube, and we're live on Facebook, and we're about to be live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. And you can listen online at the website, depetro.com. Folks, more nice, dry weather. We will be out tonight with Road Patrol live. I did have family in town, so that's how. There's Chuck. Yes. There we go. All right, folks, and we are starting in just 2 minutes. 2 minutes out. That is terrible, and that is really the news. Well, there's local news that I'm going to touch on. Okay. All right, and we're going to start in one moment. In one moment. Good. Roger says he's ready to go. Glad to hear that. Audio is good. We're ready to rock. We will be active this evening. Weather should cooperate as well. You know, one thing that I have noticed, those of you that watch Road Patrol Live, I mean, the other night, that was a disturbance. No one was arrested. No one was put in custody. That was four Providence police cruisers that responded to that. So we're dry for tonight. And actually, we're dry for tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We are in for a good spell of dry weather. So, wow, that is remarkable, and it's good for us. But again, right now, police folks, very aggressive, going heavy. Nothing wrong with that. Keeping everybody in line. That's one thing, and we're going to begin right now at 1:06. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Right now, as I'd like to say on this Wednesday, August 6th. No, we are live. We're live right now, AM 1380, 99.9 FM. Now, you can always watch and listen at our Facebook page. We're live on X. We're live on YouTube. You can always listen at the website, which is depetro.com. This portion of our program, as we kick things off, and again, the big breaking news is there was an active shooter, Fort Stewart base in Georgia. The shooter apparently is in custody, and there were five victims, but from right now, from what we understand, no fatalities. But that is a big national breaking news story. But other than that, we have no other details. This portion of the program brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Remember, right now, they're cranking full-scale nursery. In the name of the game, they have delicious, fresh, homegrown corn. They have fresh vegetables. They have fresh peaches. Stop it and see them. They're right off of Route 4. They're open 7 days a week. 3688 Quaker Lane, North Kingstown. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, they also have annuals, perennials, trees, and shrubs. Stop it and see them. Full-scale nursery. But right now, delicious, fresh vegetables. Especially, you're going to love their homegrown corn. And summer corn is just so great. And then also delicious peaches and other fruits and vegetables. PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, remember, if you ever miss a segment, you can log on to our website. We post a lot of our video there. We also break news there. If you'd like to get in touch with me, depetro.com, depetro.com, brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. Check out their chef special. They also have special in the market at Coesit, which is the store they have right there in the front of the restaurant. They have, wonderful gift items, gift boxes, prepared foods, prepared soups. And they also have delicacies and specialty items, especially if you're of Polish descent. Now, they do have pierogi on the menu, the Coesit Inn. And they have great seafood and steaks and chops, the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. So we have a guest that's going to join us coming up at the bottom half of the hour. And she is someone who had been working in the Trump administration for the Department of Justice. Her name is Kendra Wharton, former Associate Deputy Attorney General. And we're going to be joined by her to talk a little bit about the Trump administration and the DOJ coming up. And that's going to be at the bottom half of the hour. But there's two stories I want to start with. And one is, I'm not going to go that deep on it. But as I've said, there's certain stories we do and other stories we kind of shy away from a little bit. But this story about Garden City and Newport Creamery. Now, I'm very familiar with Garden City. I've gone there all my life, and it's been fantastic. The past couple of years, it has just exploded. And as certain malls, Emerald Square Mall has disintegrated. It's actually depressing if you go by Emerald Square Mall. And Providence Place Mall, which, 25 years ago, um, was thriving when it opened. And now a lot of stores have pulled out. It really started kind of with they've recovered from the pandemic. And quite frankly, Providence Place Mall is the only reason I go to Providence Place Mall is really the Apple Store. So when Garden City, you have, and like everyone else, I have been to Newport Creamery and the whole thing, and you go in and the awful, and I've met people there. That's a good place to meet people, and for breakfast, and they have an easy menu. But what's going on in Garden City right now is, for whatever reason, the people that own and run Garden City, it sounds like they're ready to move on from their tenant. Now, there's other Newport Creameries, and Newport Creamery, by the way, is free to open anywhere they want. Maybe they want to be somewhere in and around Garden City. Maybe they want to be in another section of Cranston. There's other spots. They have other locations. I know there's one on Route 44 in Smithfield. I know there's a Newport Creamery on Post Road in North Kingstown, and also, as I said, Smithfield. I don't know some of the other locations, but where they are, if this is true, that the owners of Garden City have the opportunity to bring in the Apple Store, to me, that is absolutely a no-brainer. So, yeah, I get it that they've been a longtime tenant. I think they've been there for 63 years. But times change. It doesn't mean they have to close the store, but that is a very valuable spot to occupy in Garden City. But I'm going to tell you, so this is a business thing. Now, do I travel to Garden City because of Newport Creamery? The answer is no. How often are people really going to Newport Creamery in Garden City? I don't know, maybe once a summer, once in a while, once a year if they're lucky. Now, if you bring in the Apple Store, well, now that's a game changer. Now I'd be going there far more often. So this is a business equation, and this is a business sense. The owners of Garden City that have proven to be wildly successful and quite the destination. And now you also have Chapel View across the street. You have Topgolf, easy access from 95, Route 37, 295. It's fantastic. But where I break off is this talk that local politicians are suddenly going to go after the owners of Garden City because they're upset that Newport Creamery may be leaving. I want to repeat, they're not going out of business. Their location there right now seemingly doesn't work for the owners of Garden City. So, I haven't spoken, but I'm seeing on Channel 10, Charlene Lima, and then there's a councilman. They're going to stop this and fight this. What do you think you're talking about? Why? Are you being paid by Newport Creamery? Is that how it's going? Are they promising you money? Don't tell me that type of stuff doesn't go on, because it goes on. There's nothing good about that. Charlene Lima, and then whoever the council person is, guess what? Stay out of it. Stay out of it. That's not your role. It's not the role. Is that the way they think that the government works? That a business who wants to get a better deal on rent hire or donate or pay politicians? Don't tell me that type of stuff doesn't go on. Goes on all the time. And then they act as attack dogs. And then they would be the ones, going after the landlord. This is not only is it corrupt, it is that's not the way we do business around here. That's not the way they do business anywhere, by the way. So these locals injecting themselves, and we're going to do what's right for the community. And how much money was promised? Don't say. And by the way, that is nothing against. I happen to, I've met in the past the owners of Newport Creamery. It's nothing against them. State lawmaker, city council member vows to fight Garden City Center over Newport Creamery. That is not your fight. I don't know what they're talking about. And Charlene Lima is joining Andy Andahar to fight the closure by any means necessary. I don't even know what that means. You don't have a leg to stand on. Do you realize the corrupt overtones? There should be an investigation into this. Don't say they're doing it for the greater good. Does this mean how much money have they been promised? You're going to inject yourself into a business relationship. What if, pick another store business in Garden City, pick another one. LA Fitness. They want a better deal on the rent. So now they're going to hire this Andy Andahar and Charlene Lima, and they're going to go after the landlord of Garden City to get them a better deal. And there just happens to be some money slipped into an envelope or a brown paper bag. What exactly are they talking about? This has no bearing. They have no standing here. Zero. Folks, this should be called out. This should be condemned. Charlene Lima, they have no standing in this. How would you feel if whatever? Or how about the fact now let's flip it. Let's flip it. What if the landlord is starting to pay Charlene Lima and Andy Andahar and pay them? Don't tell me that type of stuff doesn't go on. Pay them cash in envelopes, brown paper bag. Suddenly, they're going after one of the stores and they want to help the owner of Garden City raise their rent. They have no standing in this equation. It is absolutely preposterous. Much like Charlene Lima, who I've known her and dealt with her in the past, not the biggest fan, but I have nothing against her per se. But she was the same one that was defending Enrique Sanchez, saying, I'm sure, in that strong Eileen Violent accent, I'm sure if he could take his words back, he'd choose his words more carefully. No, he never said that. He calls members of ICE Nazi Gestapos. I'm sure he would choose his words. What are you talking? The community, Newport Queenway. Hey, stay out of it. See, you don't need these people. No, Sanchez doubled down. I'm sure he could choose his words more carefully. Why don't you learn English? She's like one of those people. Again, I know this sounds harsh, but someone needs to call them out. That's a form of corruption. Don't tell me, oh, no, I'm doing this for my own. You're not doing anything for the good of the community. The good of the community is that people need to eat off falafels at that location. They can't go a mile down the road. They can't go around the block. They won't go on Reservoir. They won't go on across from City Hall, Pontiac, or anywhere like that they've started to try to change. No, the community needs to go and have grilled cheese right there. Like, what planet are you living on? Folks, the community, oh my God, frightening. She went on News Nation. They needed a translator. This program brought to you by Propane Plus. Remember, all your heating and cooling needs. Call them 401-885-4229. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. Heating and cooling, what a difference it's going to make. Remember, always online at propaneplus.com. You just go to their website, type in the zip code, residential or commercial. It's Propane Plus. And also, folks, this portion of the program, I don't blame Garden City. Maybe they're thinking, we're thriving. Maybe we could do better than just a place that sells ice cream and grilled cheese. They're in business. They're trying to run a business. A flagship can set the tone. Like I said, Providence Place Mall has never recovered from Nordstrom leaving. When Nordstrom was there, that was a coup. They left. They replaced it with, I don't know, stuff that you wouldn't wear. But so the idea of the Apple store, if you had an Apple store at Garden City, you'd get people from all over. So enough of this, the nostalgia, and oh my God, these people. The community, Newport Queenway, enough. They can move down the road. I don't blame them. It totally makes sense to me. That'd be a great spot. That you come in and the first thing you see is the Apple store. Now we're getting somewhere. I would love that. Put me on the list. I'm in favor of it. God almighty. Again, nothing against Newport Creamery, but politicians have no bearing here. They have no say or standing. So can you imagine what if Governor McKee, if he start, like, where does this end? Politicians start involving themselves. We're going to go through that. What language she's speaking? Because it's not English. This portion of the program, folks, is brought to you by ServPro. Remember, when disaster strikes, it changes everything. Call ServPro of Providence. Fast, thorough, professional. 401-941-5500. Remember, if you have a fire or a flood or you have mold, ServPro of Providence. They have great social media. I share their page. 401-941-5500. So just to be very clear, there's no business. They have no standing. But I want to also touch on, and this is new. This is new. And we do have our guest. People like the Charlene Lima impression. We're going to put pressure. Newport Creamery, they want, what is that? How embarrassing can this get? I saw her on News Nation. I'm from the 401. I couldn't understand her. You could see they were looking like, what is she saying? And, the thing is, I think Enrique, he probably regrets, his word. No, he doubled down on it. She has no idea what she's talking about. Now, I'm going to talk to the owner of Garden City. What? No, you're not. Why? Let me guess. And I hate doing this, but see how easy this could become? Why? Because the owners of Newport Creamery, let me guess, they offered to throw a fundraiser or make a donation. Like, they're so easily bought off. And I don't mean that against the owners of Newport Creamery. I'd be saying this about anyone. There's no place for that. Now, speaking of no place, when I saw this, I checked the Channel 10 website. Nothing. Why do I even do that anymore? I checked the Channel 12 website. Of course, nothing. So this is big. The Department of Justice. This is new. Do you understand? This is brand new. U.S. sanctuary jurisdiction, protecting American communities from criminal aliens. The U.S. Department of Justice has designated the below list sanctuary jurisdictions. Now, this just came out this week. And notice, of course, there's nothing locally about it. Sanctuary jurisdiction characteristics. Now, what is different is many times when Governor McGreed is asked on these WMKRO and these other fluff places he goes, as he's in studio, getting all the tough questions from Matt Allen and Charlene Lima. What jumped out at me is not only is Rhode Island on the list, and Massachusetts is not on the list. Boston is on the list. Certain cities are on the list. But the state of Rhode Island is on the list. Same with Connecticut, Colorado, California, Illinois, sound familiar? Minnesota, Vermont, Washington. Rhode Island's on the list. And what jumped out at me is something that I have been saying all along. Limits on ICE detainers. Cities, states, or counties, I'm going to stick with states, that refuse to honor ICE detainer requests unless there's a warrant signed by a judge. Now, that is number 6 of the characteristics, sanctuary jurisdictions. Folks, the reason I mention that, and for those of you that listen and follow would know, is that is exactly in 2014 Governor Chafee signed an executive order that an ICE detainer, the only way it would be honored is if there was a warrant signed by a judge. As I have stated, Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee could reverse that like this quickly. Boom. We're going to reverse what Chafee did. It's right there in black and white. But instead, he goes on W. McKee RO. And by the way, let me also say this. I mean, like a lot of people, I've known Gene a long time. I like Gene. Alan, not so much since he's still, buddies with Pork Boy. But do you understand? Governor McKee goes into forums where he has a friendly atmosphere, where he has people that won't drill down on this. They continue to accept. At this point, he's not being truthful. Am I calling him a liar? I'm saying he dodges the question and they allow him to dodge. And it's very clear because he'll say, oh, no, we work with ICE as long as they have a warrant signed by a judge. Well, the DOJ just listed sanctuary states, and Rhode Island is officially on that list. And one of the things they list is what I have been talking about since Chafee did it 11 years ago. States that refuse to honor an ICE detainer unless there's a warrant signed by a judge. And he's allowed, I want to be very clear, he's allowed to get away with it. And he shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. He has a commercial out in his announcement that he's going to seek another term. And he talks about protecting residents or something akin to that. Do you understand? Right now, Governor McGreed, he obviously goes on his station that is essentially run by his pal who holds down the afternoon running interference for him. He decides what shows he goes on. They're told in advance, don't push him on this. Every time he's asked, he's allowed to just seem confused. I don't know. I'll have to find out about that. And but this can't be avoided anymore. This is not in the past. This could be reversed. And I want to be very clear about that. It was changed by executive order. Raimondo, she went along with it. She went along with it. Let's be very clear about Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee. He could reverse it. He could. I'm not saying he put it in motion, but he could change it in a heartbeat. Chafee put it in through executive order. He could take it out. I'm going to read the list again. I don't know if they mention anything about driver's licenses. Not that, I don't know if they need to. But what this reaffirms that you should know is there is this running narrative of both media and elected officials. And they play, as they call it, Mickey the Dope. I don't know. I don't think we are. Or they try to say, Providence might be. Providence isn't listed. The entire state is listed. You know why? Because they are on to him. They're on to the fact that ICE, as I've posted, who had the video of ICE scooping up that criminal outside of Kent County? That would be the chosen one. I was the one that posted that. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by J. Perry Paving. Call them today. Free estimate, any project, especially if you're a veteran. Call J. Perry Paving, 401-732-1730. 401-732-1730. High quality, fair pricing, exceptional service, free estimate, but especially if you're a veteran. Maybe your mom is a veteran. Maybe your dad is a veteran, or your son or daughter, or maybe your grandfather, grandmother, boyfriend, girlfriend. 401-732-1730. You know what's better than one veteran getting the driveway paved by J. Perry Paving? Two. Maybe there's a veteran on your street. Hey, he's in the neighborhood. Do both. I've been at some of the sites with letter J. Perry Paving. They knock out 3 driveways. J. Perry Paving. Call them, 401-732-1730. Remember, residential, commercial, but high quality, fair pricing. They are committed to staying on schedule, and they're licensed and insured. It's J. Perry Paving. Folks, again, good afternoon. And that is something that I believe needs attention. And it needs attention because it, it's as if the local media is not keeping up with what's going on with the national press. Now, joining us right now, as we have seen in this administration, there has just been phenomenal talent that has been coming into the administration. And joining us right now, although now former Associate Deputy Attorney General, but obviously in the know, and she recently just left the Department of Justice. We want to welcome to the John DePietro Show, and it's Kendra Wharton. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on the John DePietro Show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Kendra, let's start off. You recently just left. I think a lot of people would argue that President Trump has assembled, in many ways, almost like a dream team at the DOJ. I'd like to just give you a minute to just highlight some of the superstars that you were working with.
Yeah, no, happy to. As you mentioned, I am fresh out of the federal government at this point. I served as Associate Deputy Attorney General under Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche for the last 7 months at this point. It is an amazing team. Attorney General Bondi has done a fantastic job. She has a terrific staff. I worked really closely with them over the last 7 months. And then the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, he's someone I've known for close to a decade at this point. He and I have worked together for many years, including on President Trump's legal team. He and I worked together. We represented President Trump in the Florida case, the DC case, both of those brought by former special counsel Jack Smith, and then also the New York case in Manhattan that was brought by Alvin Bragg. It's a really terrific team. We've lost some really notable people recently. So the PADAG, the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, Amble Beauvais, he just recently left. Congratulations to him on his nomination and confirmation to the Third Circuit. That was really huge.
And I want you to know this program was leading the charge in favor of him against Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who was trying to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, it's a really huge win. Kudos to everyone who was involved in that. He was a great partner. Todd is an amazing leader. Attorney General Pam Bondi is an amazing leader, but it's a lot of us that went in. There was a group of, I would say, 40 or so of us, presidential appointees and attorney general appointees, who went on day one on January 20th. And our responsibility was to clean things up and then to ensure that President Trump's agenda, his policies were being put in place at DOJ, and also from a law enforcement perspective, to make sure that the Department of Justice does what it should be doing, which is keeping our streets safe.
Kendra,
and also
if you
ensuring.
Could...
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there.
Kendra, if you could touch on, no, that's quite all right. If you could touch on, and I just read that, the Department of Justice putting out that there were some states basically following other laws. If you could, touch on that, that's not easy for the Department of Justice. They basically have to come out and announce that there are certain states that are not following the law.
That's right, especially when it comes to these sanctuary cities. That was an early initiative at the Department of Justice to ensure that we're identifying jurisdictions and making sure they do follow the law.
What is your thought on how we're seeing how they have to come out and the government make announcements because of these increased attacks, both language and actions against officers of ICE?
That is really, honestly, that's a really difficult area. It's just terrible what some individuals are facing. These are law enforcement officers. They're doing their jobs. They're doing what they need to do to protect us and to secure our borders. And the fact that they're facing In some cases, personal violence, physical violence is really terrible. We have to protect our law enforcement, our ICE officers, our police. I personally worked with the Bureau of Prisons, and a big thing for me was also to ensure that we're protecting the security of our prison officials. These are all people that are doing really hard jobs, and we should respect the work that they're doing.
Kendra, if you could also touch on, since you're fresh out of the Trump administration, just what are some of the things you'd like to pass along to people that they should know of how the DOJ is operating right now? And it sure sounds like the president has complete faith and confidence in the team that he's assembled there.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to know that there's legwork involved in this, right? You came in, it is a massive organization. It does take time to wrap things up that previously shouldn't have been brought, and then also to bring the cases that should be. And I firmly, with my entire heart, with my being, trust the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General to do the right thing, to evaluate the things that are coming out right now. Some of the information put out most recently by DNI Tulsi Gabbard. I trust them to look into that thoroughly and to bring any cases that should be brought and to do it the right way.
Do you think, as a result of the past administration, that there is maybe a lack of confidence that people have in the system right now?
Of course, I think there's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of skepticism that you can really, for lack of a better term, clean the swamp, right? It's a big undertaking, but the thing is, there are people there that are really trying to do the absolute best thing and to make sure what happened previously doesn't happen again. No one knows that better than the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. They've lived it, I've lived it, and you just can't let the same misconduct continue on.
Kendra, if you could also touch on, obviously, the president very well. I was, mentioning earlier how he could just pick up the phone and go on CNBC, no notes, and is just rattling everything off. If you would just touch on the experience you had, just the endless energy, what a difference where, we'll see him walk the rope line before he gets on Marine One, and he is, just pointing and taking questions and answering them in real time. Again, no notes. Just if you would take a moment just to talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I had the absolute privilege of spending 3 months in as he would say it, a really cold courtroom in Manhattan. That was an incredible experience. And if anything I took out of that is that I don't know anyone that has the resolve and the tenacity that he does. He took everything they had to offer, like everything they could put against him, they did. And he just constantly stayed positive. He didn't like it. He wasn't happy about it all, but he stayed on it. And he gave everyone else the energy and the belief that we will win in the end. And he did.
What about finally, Kendra, before we let you go, is there something in the big, beautiful bill that you feel is going to be very beneficial that maybe hasn't, been given enough time and attention that it should be on their radar, that it's going to be impactful?
Look, I'm a lifelong conservative and Republican, so I certainly appreciate the tax cuts, the savings to the American taxpayers. But I think in the end, it's the resources that are being provided to our law enforcement. And that's a wide range of law enforcement. It really is not just ICE. It's not just local, state, and then police and the FBI. It's also the Marshal Service, the Bureau of Prisons. All of these people, they need the resources, and they weren't getting them in the past. They were being drained of resources. The morale was terrible. And so this is a real huge step forward. That and the president's budget are making a really big difference.
Folks, again, she is fresh out of the DOJ. It is Kendra Wharton. Kendra, I also, just before I let you go, the DOJ yesterday just released a list of kind of an updated list of states, cities, jurisdiction, counties that are now considered sanctuary. The state of Rhode Island and Connecticut is on the list. The city of Boston's on the list. I can tell you firsthand, Florida obviously is the opposite of it. But when there's a sanctuary state or city, it causes, there's an element of chaos that comes with it. There's an element of lawlessness that enters in. There are people who don't contact the police because they're afraid of their statute. There are people that should be contacting the police. There's
Mhm.
police, they're not sure what laws they're supposed to
What to do.
enforce, what laws they're supposed to overlook. It is that is something that the DOJ, they're right to drill down, that if we really want to restore law and order, you have to have this across the board.
You really do. And that means using all the tools you can to make sure that they do abide by our federal laws. That means defunding them where you have to, like grants, other federal money that goes to it. You don't get the benefit when you don't enforce our federal laws. That's really important.
Folks, again, Kendra Wharton. Kendra, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Congratulations on, I'm sure
Thank
you're going to
you.
have a enjoyable August, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for having me.
All right, folks, Kendra Wharton right here. Now, again, that is someone who was in DC, and I can't have a conversation like that with anyone local who would recognize the lawlessness that these sanctuary provisions and guidelines and what it entails. And I think case in point, as Rhode Island ends up on the list, I haven't seen one person even on the Republican side put out a press release, draw attention to it. I haven't seen, other than not one local media outlet. I think I want to give credit. I didn't know that the patch was still around. Someone sent me someone from the Coventry patch. The Coventry patch, that they published a story on it. But I mean the generals, the big ones, meaning, or the top tier, the Channel 10, the Channel 12, the Providence Journal. No one seemingly is doing anything on that. And it does, as you watch when we're live, when you have sanctuary status, creates lawlessness. And it also creates these people that just keep circulating through the system. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by, remember, Corey at Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Call them today, 401-283-9815. 401-283-9815 for Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Now, what can they do for you? What a difference it's going to make for your garage if you get your garage epoxied or patio, decorative concrete flooring. They'll also resurface basketball court, tennis court, pickleball court. They'll make your pavement look like new. Call them, request a free quote. It's Quality Asphalt Seal Coating, 401-283-9815, 401-283-9815. You can also find them on social media. It's Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Now, let's see. Larry asked me, who is the company that I recommend for landscape materials? Larry, you want to contact Watson Materials. 401-885-0600. Watson Materials, the most complete selection of landscape materials in southern New England is Watson. Whether it's landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls. Sorry, folks. It must be that cheap blow that I picked up at Kennedy Plaza. Watson Materials, what a difference it can make with your outside. But Larry and anyone actually, that's who you want to deal with. Call them. Call Sean at Watson Materials. Request a quote, 401-885-0600. Whether it's cobblestone, decorative stone, natural stone. Watson Materials, 401-885-0600. You can also look for them on Facebook. So I'm going to just repeat and report what is making news. And what is making news is this is not a list from the past. This is something that Governor McGreed cannot say, oh, I was unaware of that. Or he can't say, gee, I have nothing to do with that. This list just came out from the Department of Justice, and they cannot skate away that the state is listed as a sanctuary state. And what jumps out at me, now it is true, we're not the only New England state, but New Hampshire's not on this list. Massachusetts is not on this list. Rhode Island, Connecticut, Vermont. Maine is not on this list. California, Colorado. I never realized Colorado and just how progressive a lot of their policies are and the people that run Colorado, but they are. But Colorado, California, and then you have Washington State, Oregon, which I'm not surprised, right? Portland, of course, sanctuary. Seattle, Washington, Seattle, Portland. Sometimes, as we know, that's like ground zero with some of these battles. Nevada, maybe because I shouldn't be surprised. I didn't realize Nevada operates as a sanctuary. Minnesota, maybe people would be surprised, Minnesota, but not their policies. That's, Minnesota that gave us George Floyd, Minnesota that has Governor Tim Walz. Also, you have Illinois. A big part of Illinois, obviously, is Chicago. You know what else is good? Delaware. What's also crazy is District of Columbia, D.C. Think about that. D.C., where that's all, the administration is right there. Last night, I think, or yesterday, President Trump even floated out that maybe the federal government should take over D.C. It is crazy that the president lives there, and then you have even illegals, and it operates as a sanctuary. New York, New Jersey's not on this list. New Jersey's not on this list. Pennsylvania's not on this list. The Carolinas are not on this list. Florida, Texas are not on this list. New York is, mostly probably because of New York City and then also the governor there. But a state that is on that list is Governor McKee. And the reason I mention that is a big provision that they have laid out is something that I have talked about since Governor Chafee, through executive order, changed it in 2014. And that is that Governor Chafee changed it that an ICE detainer would only be honored if there was a warrant signed by a judge. Florida doesn't do that. Texas doesn't do that. Georgia doesn't do that. The Carolinas don't do that. Pennsylvania, Ohio, New Hampshire doesn't do that. Rhode Island does it under Governor McKee. He could change that. He won't change it. And not only will he not change it, our local, unless I'm missing something, maybe they'll start to jump on it. I believe, as I've said, you have elected Republicans. I recognize it's the summertime. I get that it's August. I know the General Assembly's not in session. What would it take to have Representative House Minority Leader Mike Chippendale and State Senate Minority Leader Jessica De La Cruz? What would it take for them to throw together a press conference and say this is wrong and we're going to introduce legislation in the upcoming session to try to fight it and stop it? It would draw attention to it. They could try, unless they just want to say, oh, we can't get press. No one pays attention to us. If they want to go down that road, then they're not going to have anything. But we don't have a Republican in Congress. We don't have a Republican in the Senate. We don't, and by the way, last night there was a town hall meeting with Seth Magaziner and Jack Reed, and they were getting hammered, and they're getting hammered by progressives and people that are screaming, you're not doing enough for Gaza. I mean, think of that crowd. That's the crowd they attract. It's the progressives. We don't have our lieutenant governor is Matos, Democrat. Who's the Secretary of State? Democrat. Who's the general treasurer? Democrat. We don't have the highest elected Republicans. They could invite Mayor Hopkins, the mayor of Cranston, to stand with them. They could invite the Lincoln Town administrator to stand with them. They could invite the mayor of Warwick to stand with them. They could invite maybe some of the town managers of Smithfield, North Smithfield, Burrillville. Maybe they could invite some of those people. Maybe this would motivate some people to run for office. President Trump won Woonsocket. Like, who's the elected official that is going to take the lead on this? Because all I hear is silence, and silence is compliance. Now, again, I want to touch on this Garden City situation with Newport Creamery. And this isn't the actions of Andy Andahar, I don't think I know him, and Charlene Lima, who I do know, this is not about Newport Creamery. This is about two elected officials that think it's their business to jump in. They're not leaving the state. They're not, they have other locations. They just lease. They have a lease agreement with the owner. I don't know. Maybe it's always been a lease. Maybe there was a time they could have bought that land and they chose not to. Maybe I'm sure they have a Burger King right down the street from there. They have other properties. Maybe that could be turned into a Newport Creamery, unless they like that. I'm just saying, this is not to be about Newport Creamery. It's about Charlene Lima and whoever this Andy Andahar is, public officials, elected officials, announcing that they're going to get in the middle of a dispute between a landlord and a tenant. And they have no place. They have no place doing that. And as I've said in the past, you go back to September 4 years ago, 2022, Governor McKee, Seth Magaziner, Matos, walking a picket line in Pawtucket against a private company whose drivers went on strike. I think they were Teamsters or laborers of some union. And the elected officials, they're supposed to be like the refs. They're supposed to be on the sidelines. They're not supposed to be taking sides. Charlene Lima, no input from the community. The community, what are you talking about? The community's demanding ice cream and coffee milk, and grilled cheese. That's ludicrous. Newport Creamery, they're not forced to leave Cranston. Maybe many times it can revive the brand. Many times it's a free publicity campaign to announce. There's empty stores on Reservoir Avenue. They could open right down the street. They could open, maybe there's an empty spot in Chapel View, that they could open there. Maybe there's a piece of property they could build their own. They're not being forced out of business. So this business of Lima, we're going to go after this landlord. No, you're not. You're not going after anyone. Because as I've stated, this is not about Newport Creamery. This is if this becomes the norm. So if you're a business owner and you're having a problem with a rent or a landlord or something, so that becomes the new blueprint. You pay off government officials, elected officials, and they become your attack dogs to what? Get you a better rent deal? Try to lower your rent? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in successful states. It doesn't, that's the norm in corrupt places. Now, Charlene Lima and this Andy Andahar, am I convinced that they're not getting some form of payment? No, not at all. If anything, I'd be surprised. I'm sure that was offered many times. Why else are they speaking out? That's not their fight. That's not their fight. This is Garden City, the owners of Garden City. If Garden City has empty storefronts, do the elected officials, do they say, hey, maybe I can help out? Do they do anything like this? You don't hear the mayor saying anything. Here's a thought. Why not let Garden City, the people that own it, let them run it? And run it with tenants that they feel would be successful. And you look for niches. You look for something that could really bring in a lot of traffic. And if it's true that the Apple store, who's at Providence Place Mall, is flirting with the idea of going there, I would be, I don't know if I'd be first in line, but I'll be that's a fantastic idea. I love the idea of that. That is someone, they'd get my business and they'd get it more than, I don't like going to the Apple store at Providence Place Mall, as I've said, and I'm not alone. That's the only reason I go to Providence Place Mall. Providence Place Mall, the garage is dangerous. The people that go there are dangerous. I understand that people don't want to go there. It's outdated. It's not your imagination. It is dangerous. Every time I go to Providence Place Mall, what do I see? Gang members. Gang members, and I wonder, are they going to recognize me? It's not safe. So I would go to the Apple store. I'd probably go to the Apple store once a month if it was in Garden City. And you know, it'd be great if it was right there where Newport Creamery is. I want to be very clear. This is nothing against Newport Creamery. It's certainly nothing against the owners of Garden City. Retail is very competitive. It's not easy. Look at all the empty malls. You know, the formula that we used to have, look at the way they've changed Midland Mall. Look at how it is kind of depressing. You go into Rhode Island Mall, there's empty stores. It's not easy. Again, the most depressing is Emerald Square Mall. There's nothing there. I remember before Midland Mall outfitted it, where now it's all just the separate stores. Years ago, I worked at Midland Mall. I mean, one of my first jobs was at Midland Records at Midland Mall. I went back there, I don't know how long ago. They used to have the DMV there. Maybe it's still there. I don't even know. But it was so depressing. It was as if you were seeing ghosts walk by. It was deserted. They reformulated it. Now it's all separate stores. That's how people like to shop. And there's not, gangs of kids hanging around. A problem they have at Warwick Mall is people that use it, they drop off their teenagers and then they just roam around the mall and they feel there's a food court, there's a restroom, there's security. But who wants to deal with that? Nobody. So, but public officials getting involved, what, they're going to force the landlord of Garden City to keep Newport Creamery? Where does this end? What if the owners of Garden City, what if they want to get rid of LA Fitness? Maybe they say, hey, on second thought, we don't like the clientele that you're bringing here. What is Charlie Lima? I like working out. What, she's going to inject herself and get some money under the table? As if that doesn't happen. I don't know Andy Andahar, but I do know that that is not how business works. And the state has enough of a corruption issue without these people making it worse. Folks, I want to remind you about Arch Design Builders. Call them today, 401-207-4124. Arch Design Builders. What can they do for you? How about a new kitchen, a new bathroom, a new basement, a new deck, a special project? Arch Design Builders. Set up that free meeting with Ed and Roxanne at 401-218-9707. 401-218-9707. It's Arch Design Builders. It all starts with the phone call, which leads to the meeting. And then show them the space that you're thinking about. Show them your basement. Show them your kitchen. Ed has described sometimes they start with a small project and then it leads to something bigger. This is who you want to do business with. We're talking about, you're going to discover the Arch difference. Family business, family owned and operated. This is high-end custom build customer service. Ed and Roxanne. This is who you want to deal with. Arch Design Builders. These are the type of people you want in your home. They're the type that not only you can trust, many times owners say, they let the dog in and out as they're doing the project. And then it starts with one project. I said it goes to another project. I know they had a client, it started with one small project. And then they just kept asking them to do, can you do this? Can you do that? Can we get a deck? Can we get our kitchen redone? Can we get the bathrooms redone? 3 years they're working there on different projects. Arch Design Builders. Call Ed and Roxanne, my friends, 401-207-4124. Well, folks, good afternoon. If you are listening to the radio, stay tuned. You will be hearing the 2 o'clock news coming up. Everyone else, we will be out on Road Patrol Live later. We'll see. Maybe the local media will not pick up on it. You're starting to realize that I really see the disconnect. People realize and appreciate that you have independent media. By the way, become a subscriber. Log on onto our Facebook page. Become a subscriber. Support it. As you can tell, those of you that listen and watch all the time. There's so many stories that we do that other people don't even pick up on, that our quote traditional media don't pick up on. But to be, and I want to thank Kendra Wharton, but to be very clear, local politicians threatening that they're going to go after landlords until the rent is lowered. Not only is that not the American way, not only is that not capitalism, I'm not even convinced that it's legal. That's something that basically goes on in banana republics and third world countries. All right, folks, we'll see you later tonight on Road Patrol Live. Enjoy this Wednesday.